Okay, we're going live now. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Spirit Sessions. This is episode 14, and we are very happy and excited to bring to you Garnet Schulhauser, multiple author, and the author most recently of Dance of the Eternal Rapture, which is an excellent read. And we'll have all his contact information below. Have you guys ever experienced an incident in your life that changed your whole life, changed your whole perspective? Well, Garnet Schulhauser from Victoria, BC, a retired lawyer now, is going to tell you about his amazing experiences with his guide, Albert. Good morning and welcome, Albert. Albert. Good morning and welcome, Albert, but good morning and welcome, Garnet, too. Sorry. He and I'm sure he's been talking to you about me. Crazy. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry. Oh, been one of those mornings already. Good morning, Garnet. Tell us, can you give us a quick intro about how you met Albert and your story and how you changed from being a corporate lawyer in Calgary to being this wonderfully wise person that's giving us so many great messages from the other side?
Sure. It all happened one sunny afternoon in May of 2007, and I was still practicing law then. And I was strolling down the street in front of my office tower, and all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, a homeless man just jumped in front of me, sort of stopped me in my tracks. And he looked like a typical homeless man with sort of long, stringy hair and a scraggly beard and dirty, slept-in clothes. But instead of walking around him like I would usually do when I was confronted by people on the street like that, I just stood there because he had these amazing, dazzling, sparkling blue eyes that were penetrating deep within me, and I felt like he knew everything about me, even though we'd never met. But I didn't feel violated because at the same time, he was sending me this wave of pure, unconditional love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. So I stood there basking in his glow like I was in a time warp. I don't know how long I stood there. Then he broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. So when I finally collected my wits, I decided I better go in the store to try to find him. I need to find out who he was and why he had stopped me. But I went in the store, walked up and down the aisles. He was nowhere to be seen. So I went back out on the street and walked up and down the street for several blocks, hoping to spot him. But he had disappeared into thin air. And so the next day, I resolved that I'd go back to the same street, same time, and see if I could find him. And I did. And I walked back to the same street, up and down for 15 or 20 minutes, about to lose hope, when I finally spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. So I went up to him and I said, "Who are you and why did you stop me the other day?" He said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to help you on your journey and answer your questions." And then my skeptical lawyer brain kicked in, and I said, "How do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because you've been sleeping on the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish." Anyway, he just gave me a big smile and he said, "You know, looks can be deceiving because you look like you're a very successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade." He said, "You know what? You can just turn around and go back to your office if you want and see if you can find all those answers you've been seeking for the last number of years on all those emails on your computer. Or you can sit down and have a chat with me." So luckily, my intuition said, no, I got to sit down and have a chat with this guy. I have nothing to lose, maybe half an hour out of my day. I sat down on the bench beside him, and we began a dialogue that went off and on for the next several months. He told me that his name was Albert. He was really one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he also told me that I was the only one who could see him in flesh and blood. Everyone else who had been passing by the bench that day would have seen me sitting there all by myself, talking to myself. And so it was quite an introduction. And I said to him, and so the first 3 times he appeared in flesh and bones to me. After that, he was just a voice in my head. We communicated by telepathy. And when I asked him, "Why did you show up as the homeless man? Why did you come into my life that way?" He said, "Well, if I had just started talking to you as a voice in your head out of the blue, you probably would have thought you were losing your mind," which is true. I probably would have. So this was his way of easing me into the conversation, getting me comfortable with him, I could see him as a manifested human. And so it worked very well. And so we had a dialogue then that went off and on, as I said, for several months. And he answered all the big questions in life, like, who am I? Why am I here? What's my life purpose? What happens to me when I die? And a lot of other answers that I had questioned him on. And partway through the conversation, he said to me, I'm not just here to satisfy your curiosity. I'm here to ask you to write a book about what I'm telling you, so that other people can have access to my revelations. So I was taken back by this. I never dreamed of writing a book. I dug my heels in it initially. I didn't really want to write a book, but he was very gently persuasive. And eventually I wrote the manuscript for my first book, Dancing on a Stamp.
Now now you got published through Ozark Mountain Press. That's Dolores Cannon's publishing company? Yeah, that's awesome. Well, being a lawyer, you would have that really logical, detail-oriented mindset. So when Albert came to you with, he'd come to you at night, wouldn't he? And sort of, you'd go out astral traveling, or at first?
Yeah, this is the second sort of encounters I had with him after the first dialogue I had. Then he just showed up in my bedroom one night, just sort of he was like a ghost-like figure standing in the doorway. And I wasn't expecting him. He just showed up. And when he moved closer to my bed, I could see that it was Albert in astral form. And he just said, okay, we finished sort of round one. Round two begins now. I'm going to take you on some astral trips to the spirit side and to other places in the universe so that you can write about what you hear and see. So then he just literally pulled my astral body out of my physical body. I turned around and looked, and my physical body was still lying sound asleep in bed. And beside my wife and my little dog. And he just said, come with me. And it was what rose up through the ceiling, up through the clouds, and initially hovered at a high point above our planet, which is really breathtakingly beautiful, our planet from space. I just wished everyone could see it from that angle. And then our first stop was he took me through a shimmering doorway to the spirit side, which was really my first astral trip with him.
Oh, can I ask you one question here? Because I thought I'd like to clear this up for everybody. Is the Earth flat or is it round? Because
it's absolutely a globe.
I've always thought it was a globe. And are we the right side up or the wrong side up, or is the globe pretty well an accurate description of it? Other people.
It's an accurate description. But from where I see it, the North Pole was sort of on, as I'm looking at it, on the top, and the South Pole's on the bottom. And actually, during my travels, I actually circumnavigated our planet several times with Albert. Very definitely, it's a globe.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I couldn't get my head around the other theories, anyways. So I guess I'm just too old-fashioned. You've had lots of talks. I think because I am so connected to the Earth and the environmental things that I do in my life and my other volunteer life. You had a conversation with Gaia, actually, the way and it's remarkable that I've always thought of her as like a huge person, and we're just sort of like fleas on her back here. Can you tell us a little bit about that and her message to humankind about that? Because I think that's a really important message to get out.
Yeah, I was quite surprised to learn that our planet has a consciousness. I've always thought of Earth as being a set of inert molecules, rocks and soil and water and so on. It has a consciousness. It's a real living being. And Albert took me to have a conversation with Gaia, who was under a cavern underneath the North Pole. And so I was quite surprised to hear this voice coming towards me, very, very sort of compassionate voice. And she identified herself as the consciousness of Mother Earth, Gaia. And her message was really quite it was really quite heartwarming in one sense, and also slightly chilling in another sense. She said that she's really fiercely protective of all of her flora and fauna. That's all of her animals, including humans. She was very upset at the way humans had been abusing Mother Earth and her other animals over the last number of years, particularly with our pollution. After the Industrial Revolution, we really stepped up the pace of the amount of pollution we dumped into the atmosphere, the rivers, the soil. And she was quite upset about that because it was harming her environment and harming her other animals. She really wanted humans to stop. She wanted us to change our ways, stop polluting, and be more respectful of her other animals. That was her clear, strong message. And she said that, humans are like an invasive weed that's sort of taken over the whole garden. And her planet wasn't just for humans. It's for everyone, for all the other animals as well. And so she really wanted us to stop. And the chilling part of it was that she said that she has the power to change what happens on the planet, and that she has, over the last few years, increased the number and intensity of natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, wildfires, volcanoes. She's trying to send us a message. She's firing a warning shot across our bow that we better change our ways or things could get really a lot worse. And so we've all noticed that there seems to be more natural disasters occurring over the last number of years. And she's sort of picking up the pace, and she really wants to get our attention. And if she has to hit us over the head with a 2x4, she's going to do that to get us to stop what we're doing and change our ways. And so she really said she loves humans like she loves all of her other animals, but she wishes that we would stop polluting her environment, stop being so abusive, not only to other animals, but we're abusive to each other as well. And so she was really quite upset about that. And so she said to me, please take this message back to your fellow humans, because more people have to sort of wake up and realize that the course we're on could end very badly if we don't change our ways.
Wow. Bex, you had a question about one of his encounters, because he's had many encounters, and I'll put it first to Bex, and then Teresa has a question as well. Go ahead, Bex.
All right. Well, first, I just want to say hi to people that are jumping on. There's lots of people on here right now. We have Tig and Jack and Jolene and Jacqueline and Caitlin and Dida. And yeah, hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us. We're so glad to have you here. This is such an amazing experience to hang out with Garnet and hear these stories about his astral travels and experiences. I am so fascinated by your encounter with the mermaid, and I would love to hear about it.
Sure. It was. This was after we had finished visiting Gaia for the second time, and I said, Albert, Gaia has lots of cards up her sleeve that most of us aren't aware of, and he said, oh yeah, she does. He says, I'll show you one more. Previously, he had taken me to see a Sasquatch and an Irish fairy. So he's showing me one more of Earth's fabled creatures that really aren't so fabled. They're actually real and alive. And so we went to off a deserted Greek island, and there I met a mermaid, a real live mermaid. I mean, she was human from the waist up, and a fishtail from the waist down. A lovely person, and we communicated by telepathy, and she said, yes, mermaids exist. So do mermen, obviously. They're mammals. They suckle their young, just like other mammals do, but they have this amazing capacity to stay underwater for like up to 2 hours without surfacing. And they're very fast swimmers, and so they've been able to, because of that, they've been able to detect or avoid detection by humans. Occasionally, the odd human will see them, but only as a glimpse, and so nobody's been able to actually capture them, and they're quite happy with that. They want to avoid humans because they view us as being abusive and violent creatures, and they're afraid if they sort of show themselves and say, hi, here we are, they'll be captured and put in some lab and poked and prodded, or put in a circus sideshow, which of course they don't want to have happen. So they just avoid us. They really wish that they could have open contact with us and live in harmony with us, but they're at this stage just say, we're just not going to take the chance. So they stay hidden, and they do help, contrary to what some of the legends say, where they have caused shipwrecks. She said, no, absolutely not. In fact, in a number of cases, they will actually help sailors from a shipwreck get onto land. So they're actually saviors, they're not a cause of a disaster or shipwreck. So they've been maligned a bit.
Sirens.
Yeah, they're not sirens, but they're just they're very much attuned with Gaia, with Mother Nature, and they live in peace and harmony. There's no crime or violence among them. They've learned to be united with the Source and with Mother Earth. And so they have aside from having to avoid humans, they have a really nice life, and they really quite enjoy it. But they just don't want to be exposed to humans for the reasons I stated.
It's so cool. You're so happy, I know. Aren't you, Bex?
Yeah.
It's your dream come true.
It is.
Have confirmation. That's awesome. Teresa, you had a question about ETs and maybe what their role is, and have you met some?
I've listened to your interviews. I binge watched so many interesting things. You're fascinating, and your adventures are awesome. But you've been to other planets where just the ocean animals live, and then you've been to one where they were like arachnid type people there. I mean, I want to hear a little bit more about those.
Yeah, the spider-like creatures is a planet near the center of our galaxy. And Albert took me there, and these creatures were highly intelligent, very advanced, communicate by telepathy. They looked a bit like spiders. They lived in underground cities because the surface of their planet was totally barren because their star had become a red giant, which sort of burned off all the vegetation. So they lived in underground cities. They were very advanced. So their role was to monitor all of the planets in our galaxy to determine when those planets would be capable of harboring life. And when they found one and they did sort of their tests remotely, then they would let the Galactic Council know, which is sort of the governing body for our galaxy. And then the council would arrange with some of the other ETs to transport life to these planets. So for the most part, life on most of the planets was seeded by the ETs, including on Earth. And so that's where most of our life came from. On the water planet that he took me to called Proteus, it was entirely covered with water, no land above the sea level. And I met with a humpback whale and a dolphin who looked exactly like our versions of the humpback whales and dolphins. And they said that they too lived in total harmony with their environment. They didn't have any technology. They didn't want or need any technology. They're quite happy to just live close to nature. And what was surprising was they said they stayed in telepathic contact with their cousins on Earth over many light years of distance. And what they heard, they said, really disturbed them because the dolphins and whales on Earth are saying, we've suffered abuse from humans for a number of centuries, being harpooned and trapped and caught in nets and suffer the pollution that we dump into the oceans. And they really, their plea was really, we hope that humans can change their ways. We'd like to live in peace and harmony with them. And we just don't understand why they abuse us. And they're very intelligent, actually, and in some ways more intelligent than humans because they can communicate by telepathy, and most humans can't. And so they're very advanced in that sort of sense. So these creatures on this water planet give me the message from their cousins on Earth that we really need to stop abusing them and treat them with dignity and respect.
That's
I love that.
Yeah,
Powerful.
I've been out to see, I've been fortunate to be up to the Haida and actually be on a sailing ship and see the whales and the orcas up close and the dolphins. And I know what you're saying, like they're just so cool, they're just, it's sad when we think that people are still hunting them in some places and
Yes.
And putting them in little aquariums for our entertainment in the name of, whatever. You just can't see that would be a good thing. I was wondering, when you had this experience with Albert, I know a lot of us in the light worker community have had a lot of these little moments, but yours is a big moment, that they changed your life. Did you did you all of a sudden realize that you had to stop doing what you were doing at that point in your life and maybe take a different path? Or how did that come about that you became an author, or did you sort of gradually get out?
Yeah, no, I mean, he clearly changed my life when I met him. And I continued to practice law as we were carrying on our first conversation. It gradually became evident to me that practicing law was no longer relevant for me, and I need to get out and do something different and follow Albert's path. So about a year after I met Albert, I retired. And then I was busy I knew I had to write my manuscript, but I sort of didn't want to really jump into it, and I kept on finding excuses not to do it. But Albert kept on pushing me gently, and so eventually I wrote it. So then after I'd written my first manuscript, I still wondered whether I should publish it or not, for fear of ridicule from my former partners and clients and so on, who might think I've lost my mind because this was totally out of character for me. But eventually I just said, I have to do it. And so I went and found the publisher, and it was published. And yeah, it's a major change in my life. totally different from practicing law. Way better for me. There's less stress. I like to think more enlightened. I'm more compassionate. I'm less prone to sort of be angry about things that happen in my life. If somebody cuts me off in traffic, in the old days, I would have flipped them the bird and cursed them. Now I just sort of, okay, they're on their own journey, and there's no point in getting upset about it, But I look at life a lot differently now.
So you weren't spiritually minded before you started this, you had this encounter. You weren't sort of on the, how can I say it, just the other path or religious or anything like that, were you?
No, I wasn't religious. I had been raised as a Roman Catholic, but I had stopped going to church a long time before. I mean, I wasn't spiritually minded other than I was searching for answers. I knew there had to be some answer that was really the right answer, and I was searching for that when I met Albert. He sort of showed up at the right time. But before that, I was just a straight-laced, stuffed shirt corporate lawyer, very much of a type A personality.
So when you and Albert were talking, and he said, when we die, we go back to the source, and we go back and we start over again with a different life plan? Or is that how it works, sort of?
No, actually, when we die, we'll go back to the spirit side where we came from before, and there we have a choice. We can decide to have another incarnation on Earth, or we can incarnate on another planet, or we can just stay in the spirit side. We don't go back to the source until we've sort of advanced ourselves to a high enough point where we can sort of merge back into the source. But even then, we don't stay there forever. We typically would, as Albert says, will typically spin out again and continue to explore the universe on the physical plane and advance ourselves even more. So the initial stage, you'll go back to the spirit side, and then you probably won't merge back into the source until you've advanced, at a higher rate. And then again, it's your choice. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. In my fourth book, there I describe what I call the dance of eternal rapture, or what Albert called it, and it was when three people from the Council of Wise Ones, three souls, did this sort of ritual dance and then sort of merged up into the source. And that's what they did. They merged up into the source, but you don't lose your identity or your personality. And if you want to come out of the source, which most souls do, according to Albert, then you just come out and still retain all of your personality, all of your memories. It's still the same you. You don't lose yourself into the sort of into the source. You just get immersed for a while in a wonderful feeling of pure, unconditional love.
Now, the Council of Wise Ones, you talked about Sophia, and Sophia, which I just learned recently this way. Sometimes I go to church because I learn things. It's quite interesting. That's the name of the Holy Spirit in the Bible, is Sophia. And I was wondering if they were connected. I found that kind of interesting that she's the head of the Wise Council, and we also call her, the Holy Spirit is called.
Actually, I wasn't aware of that, the connection. All she did was she introduced herself as Sophia, and I just left it at that without doing any research. Yeah, she was a lovely, wise, compassionate soul. She was the chair of the Council of Wise Ones. That council is a group of very wise and advanced souls who've had many incarnations on our planet, very familiar with all the pros and cons of being a human or another creature on our planet. So their role is to advise, oversee all the incarnations on Earth, and so that when you're ready to incarnate on our planet, you prepare a life plan, which you set out the major aspects of your proposed life, like the place you're going to be born, identity of your parents, siblings, friends, sometimes even spouses, and you do that for the purpose of trying to set up a series of challenges and lessons for you to go through to try to grow and evolve. Quite often, sometimes people will choose too cushy of a life, making it too easy. Others may choose too hard of a life, which means it's very difficult for them to get through it, and too much of a prospect of suicide if the life is too difficult. So the council will review everyone's life plan, and they will give you advice, like, you should change this and add that, just to make it a life more acceptable for your stage of development. But the ultimate decision as to what's in your life plan is up to each soul. They're just there to give advice and guidance. So that's their major role, and it's a very good role, because a lot of souls will just, as I said, sometimes pick out too hard of a life, and if it's really too hard, they're not going to learn what they hope to learn, because they're just so overcome with tragedy. So they give us guidance. And so, and that's very comforting to know that there's somebody who's had a lot of experience is going to give you some advice on what you should include or not include in your upcoming life.
That's so awesome. I wish we had more time today, and I hope to have you back at least a couple times more, because you do so much, and now you're doing quantum healing hypnosis technique. Is that what you're doing? Yeah, that's your new job that Albert's given you to do for a little while. Yeah.
He told me to take the course. The QHHT was started by Dolores Cannon, who is the founder of my publishing company, and so it's a technique where we put people into a very deep hypnotic trance, and the first part of it is we take them back to one or more past lives where they're actually reliving their lives. And I've seen so many of my clients, they get back into a past life, they get very emotional. There's tears streaming down their cheeks because they're really reliving something in that past life, like the death of a loved one, or perhaps being stabbed in battle or whatever. And so they actually relive it. And then the second part, which is the really good part, is that we contact their higher selves, and we contact them, and we go over the list of questions that the client has brought in. Questions like, what's my life purpose? What sort of career path should I have? Will I ever find a partner? Things like that. Sometimes very practical questions like, should I change jobs? If so, where should I go? And their higher selves will give them great answers. And it really helps people. It really gives them that extra guidance that they've been searching for.
Well, I'm excited when I go to Victoria to meet you. I know that this summer I'm gonna look you up. Again, I thank you so much. Yes. Yeah, I thank you so much for your time today and getting up so early to come on and be with us. And I really can't wait to talk with you again. And Teresa, you have some announcements while I figure out what else I was supposed to say today.
Yes, I do. First of all, I want to make sure that everybody's sharing this out. This man and his adventures are amazing. Share this out. Get his books. There's 4 of them. And at the end of my announcements, I'll tell you who shared the most last week and who won a session with a reading with Bex. So if you shared out the most this week, you win a session with Rhonda. But after our show, immediately after, at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, we have Kathy Homeyer and her awesome show, Nurturing Your Multidimensional Body. And then at 8 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, we have Janelle's show, Janelle Cameron, Cosmic Ascension Report. And you can't miss that. And that's also 5 p.m. PST. And the 3rd edition of the Akashic Academy magazine is out. And so I think that we'll be putting a link in there, and you can click on it, and you can download that. And next week, do you have a dragon in your life? We're going to have a guest called Araya Anra, and she's going to teach us about the dragons. So the winner of this week, who gets that reading with Bex, is Kelly Jean McGrain. Congratulations, and thank you for sharing out our show. We want you to continue sharing it out, and next week you can win a session with Rhonda.
Yeah, again, thank you, Garnet, and please pick up his books. They're so, when you read them, you'll understand. They ring with truth, and the stories are simple. It's like to the spiritual world, and it's, when I read it, I've read lots of science fiction. This is not science fiction. This has the ring of truth to it, and it's so easily explained. You just feel good when you read the book, except for the human part when we're not doing the great job down here. But we can all lift ourselves up, and just, it starts with everyone lifting themselves up and cleaning up after themselves. I think just like your mother taught you, that's what Mother Earth wants you to do, clean up after yourself.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, ladies, for inviting me on your show.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. Blessings to all. Take care.
Namaste.
We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.